We certainly have talked about it in the past, especially when you first came aboard, when you were either 65 or you were first eligible. But today we're going to do a refresher of all of that. And if we're successful, the goal here today is to help you make a solid decision for what you want to do in 2024. Because open enrollment is upon us. It starts October the 1st, and there are some things you can and cannot do. But what's most important is that you understand how your plan works today and what a Medicare Advantage plan would look like in the event you decided to make a move, and that would be during this upcoming open enrollment. So what you see in front of you is a diagram. Everyone has the circle in the middle called Medicare. That is your Part A and Part B. Medicare is not only not free, it also has a significant amount of out-of-pocket. So the reason you most likely chose a Medigap, at least one of them, was because you wanted to fill the gaps that were present with what we call original Medicare. So original Medicare is Part A and Part B. The other circles go on to tell us that the hospital insurance is also part of Medicare, and that is referred to as Part A. There is no premium associated with Part A, but there is a significant amount of out-of-pocket in the event you had not added a Medigap supplement to your plan. The medical insurance is Part B. Everyone pays for Part B. Most of us are at a base premium this year of $164.90, and that's per month. And if we're collecting Social Security, it's deducted automatically. And if not, they send you a quarterly bill, and then you pay Social Security directly for your Medicare. So Part A, hospital, Part B, medical insurance. Typically, Medicare Part B is Medicare pays 80% and you pay 20%. And again, we're simply setting the stage right now for where you first got started with original Medicare. So everybody that's on this webinar most likely has A and B, and it's also in your wallet or someplace in your purse, because when you do go see a doctor, you have to be able to show your Medicare card. We're also going to talk about how the prescription drug plans play in terms of obtaining that type of coverage for your plan, because it is not part of the Medigap plan. It is a separate plan, and that's what's coming up for renewal in October. And then Kristen is going to spend time really explaining in detail what is a Medicare Advantage plan, and it will give you a little bit better idea of comparing the two options, because you started out with an opportunity to look at option number 1, which was the Medigap and Part D, and option number 2, which is your Advantage plan. So sometimes people will refer to the Medicare supplement that you have as a Medigap. What I want you to know is the terms are synonymous. So sometimes you hear the word Medigap, sometimes you hear the word supplemental. They're all one and the same. The Medicare team, you can't see all of us here, but you'll see a picture in a moment. We do have a new team member. Her name is Becca, and she is a recent college graduate. Concentration on any specific carriers won't take place today, but Kristen and myself are going to be having some upcoming webinars and seminars. In particular, Kristen's going to speak to the priority health changes that are being made in 2024. So if you have an interest in an Advantage plan and you think that's where you want to go, that would be very helpful to participate in that. And then if you decide, nope, I'm staying with my Medigap, but I need to renew my Part D, and you want to know more about prescription drug coverage, I will also be having a seminar and webinar. Again, this presentation then is strictly educational. We're not going to be talking about any specific carrier. Here's brand new pictures. We all went to the photographer about a month ago and said it's time to get some new ones. So the team has grown. I thank you all. One thing about a webinar like this is I don't get to see you in person, and that's always kind of the downside to this. But I want to thank you all very much for the business over the past couple of years. In fact, in some cases, you've been my clients for 10 and 12 years. And many of you started and have stayed with the Medigap. We have Kristen, who's also part of our presentation today, and she is been with the team a couple of years now, and she is a health insurance advisor just like myself. And then we have Amy. She's been with us about a year. She started out in the client services role, but recently was not appointed, what's the word? Recently was an agent. She passed all her health and life licensing, and she's coming aboard as well. So we're introducing you to maybe some new players here, but we want you to know that with the upcoming season, the practice has grown tremendously thanks to you and your referrals. So again, I thank you for that, but we reached a point where I couldn't do it anymore by myself. So Kristen and Amy are fully capable of stepping in, and really, honestly, my goal is to work a little bit less and let them start to take over the practice here. So I'm still around. I want you to know that, but Kristen and Amy are also people that you are going to meet with and have an opportunity to work with. Becca is our newest team member. And we have my sister, Sherry. Sherry's been with me maybe about 10 years now and has done the administrative side. We do have a website. It is nancycourser.com. It's full of good information about our company, about Medicare Part A, B, C, D. It's also an opportunity to request a consultation. It's where you can send information about your medications. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. So please feel free to take a look at the website, use it accordingly, and certainly refer other people to it so they can learn more about who we are. Again, a reminder, at Cornerstone Retirement Partners, we do connect the health and the wealth. So about a year and a half ago, my husband, who was the founder of the firm, he sold his portion of the business, the wealth side, to Nolan Gosley. So Nolan and Ron work together. If you ever have any questions about your 401ks or IRAs and Roth and all those other goodies, they're definitely there to help you, because when you are a client of mine and Kristen's and Amy's, you're also a client of Ron and Nolan's. So just keep that in mind. So this diagram right here, when we first met, we had some version of it, and most likely it was right on the board when we sat in that conference room, and I said, let's look at this in terms of the left-hand side versus the right-hand side so that we can keep the two options very separate and very distinct in helping you make a decision. And let me also stress the fact that when you make a decision, whether it's staying with what you have or making a move to a Medicare Advantage plan, it's a very personal decision. There will be factors that will come into play for you. You might be thinking about your medical needs. You might be thinking about your medical history. You might be thinking about how much you want to spend, so on and so forth. So there is no wrong answer here. The goal, again, is so that you have a very good understanding of how the two plans work and which one is the best one or the right one for you. So if you're on the left-hand side, we know then that you have original Medicare, because we said everybody's got to have A and B. You don't pay anything for your hospital. It's zero, but you have at least a $1,600 deductible that's based on a 60-day benefit period. So your plan, called a Medicare supplement or a Medigap, completely pays for any hospital-related service. So if you are admitted to the hospital, you are not subject to the $1,600. When it comes to Part B, many of you have Medigap Plan G. And what's always tricky here is, remember, Medicare has parts A, B, C, D. We're going to address them all. But Medigap, or the Medicare supplement that you have, is not a part. It is a plan. So it is a plan that inserts itself inside of original Medicare, and it handles all of the potential out-of-pocket expenses by way of a deductible, by way of any type of co-insurance, et cetera, et cetera. So many of you have Medigap Plan G as in go, and the only out-of-pocket you have for your plan is the $226 for the whole year. That was the requirement for Part B this year. We do not have the upcoming 2024 numbers yet. We have heard that the Part B premium will go up about $10 from $164.90. I'm estimating about $175. That again is for someone whose income stays below certain thresholds. And we can always talk about that independent of that, but most of us are at the first tier. So if you were budgeting, you'd be budgeting about $175 next year per month. So again, back to the Part A and B and the 3 cards in your wallet. The Part D is a prescription drug plan that you can renew every year. If you decide to keep it, you do nothing. And your Medigap supplement, we're going to spend a little bit more time explaining what those parts and pieces are that would have probably influenced the decision that you made. Again, I mentioned earlier, sometimes people call this a Medicare supplement or a Medigap. They're still one and the same. This is issued by a private insurance company. So they're names that you know and love: Mutual of Omaha, Transamerica, Priority Health, Blue Cross Blue Shield, United Healthcare, AARP. There's about 35 companies. We represent about 12. It will always pay secondary to original Medicare. So when you have a claim, you give the doctor your red, white, and blue card, and you give them your Medigap card, and it goes to Medicare first. And Medicare says, oh, this is a hospital expense. There's a $1,600 deductible. Then it goes directly to your secondary insurance or your Medigap, and they pay it in its entirety. And it works similarly with the Part B type of expense. So if you had received some physical therapy and you had multiple treatments, again, it's going to go to Medicare. Medicare is going to say, do you owe the $226 annual deductible? Yes or no? And then it goes through the system in that particular way. But once you've satisfied the $226, if you have Medigap Plan G, and it's right on your card what that letter is, then everything else, as long as it's medically necessary, is covered by Medicare. The letters G, N, high deductible, so on and so forth, those all pertain to types of Medigap plans. So keep in mind, it doesn't matter what the insurance company's name is. What matters is the letter. But the government says the plan is standardized. So if you have Plan G, it will always pay the claim the same way. What is not the same is the premium. And when we went through that together, what we showed you were competitive plans, and you made a decision based on that time, what made the most sense in terms of a company and in your comfort level. The guarantee issue applies to people who, when they turn 65 or they were first eligible, so it was the first appointment that we made it clear that you were not subject to any medical questions whatsoever, no pre-existing conditions. So you thought, gee, my history looks this way, or I've been treated for cancer in the past, or maybe I have a CPAP machine, or maybe I had a heart attack. I mean, those were all things that went through your mind because you knew that the very first time you came aboard, you were not going to be asked any medical questions. So just as an aside, when the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare came into play, they said no medical underwriting. You can't refuse or deny anybody coverage. That is correct, but that is not true for the Medigap. The Medigap clearly states when you first come aboard, we cannot ask you medical questions. But if you revisit your Medigap, which you can always do, you are going to be subject to the medical questions or the underwriting. So again, the beauty of what you have is, think of it in terms of very predictable health insurance. You don't have to worry about any out-of-pocket kinds of charges, incidental charges, where did this charge come from? Because your plan virtually covers everything with the exception of perhaps the Part B deductible, and that would be Plan G. If you have Plan F, you don't even have that. Everything is covered. Remember, it must be medically necessary and it must be covered by Medicare. There are some things that are not covered by Medicare, and you probably know that you need a facelift, or you want this kind of shot. I had somebody who wanted a vitamin D shot. There are things that are not covered by Medicare, but for the most part, they really do an excellent job of your coverage. Your premiums when you first start are going to be low. As you know, they continue to increase on an annual basis, but they start out about $110, $125. Men always pay a little bit more than women, and it is based on your age at the time you come aboard, where you live, and there is also a cost of living adjustment that is also applied. We often like to think of the Medigap as paying up front for what we view as the comprehensive coverage here. So you're paying $100 and some every month, regardless of whether you use it, but if you use it, you got it covered. Guaranteed renewable means that once you're aboard, as long as you pay your premium, they can never cancel you, nor could they ever come after you and say, we're going to treat you like auto insurance. You had a big claim, so now we're going to charge you more in terms of your premium. They are not allowed to do that. It is not subject to the annual enrollment period. And we often get that question because people will say, well, wait a minute, I am looking at my Part D. Why would I not look at my Medigap? Well, Medigap is private insurance. It is not overseen by the government like Part C and Part D is. Remember, this is a plan and it's private insurance. There are no networks. That's a huge factor for some people. They said, you know what? I like the idea of being able to pick my doctor as long as they take Medicare, and they'll take me as a patient anywhere in the United States. There is also some limited international coverage. One downside certainly is that there is no preventative dental, vision, and hearing. And for many people coming off a group plan, that was kind of a bummer because you were used to having that. The government does not yet approve any kind of preventative coverage. I know that it's been looked at in the past. Keep in mind, if you have a medical need that's related to a dental service, a vision problem, or a hearing issue, it will be covered by Medicare. So if somebody has glaucoma or another type of eye issue, that's going to be a medical coverage that is not considered preventative. That's going to be covered by your plan. You have to buy a separate prescription drug plan. They've been around since the year 2006. There are some significant changes that are being forecasted and planned for as part of the Deficit Reduction Act. There is some international coverage, and certainly USA coverage anywhere, no issue whatsoever. As long as the doctor takes Medicare, they will bill them as the primary insurance, and your secondary insurance will be your Medigap carrier. Keep in mind, your plan can be replaced at any time of the year. We do ask that you wait until the first quarter to let us revisit your plan. We've tried to stress the importance the first 8-9 months of the year, but once open enrollment rolls around for us, we've got lots of appointments, lots of analysis, and we want to give the emphasis to the Part Ds and the Medicare Advantage plan people that come in for the reviews. But we will certainly help you and see whether or not we might be able to make a change in terms of the premium. But what you'll need to keep in mind is the medical underwriting. So what we typically will do is we'll run a quote. We'll give you an idea of the possible carriers. Then we will send you a list of the questions. And you can say, you know what, I think I can pass them with flying colors. Or you might say, you know, there's a couple here I'm not sure about. We might want to talk about it. If you're finishing up physical therapy, for example, they want you to finish it. So there are some things that might require that you wait, and there are some medical conditions that are definitely a knockout where they're not going to let you move. But if you were ever to apply and you did not get approved, they're not going to cancel your existing coverage. You will always have your Medigap. but we'll be happy to work with you. Sometimes there is significant savings by going back to the drawing board. So it's something, again, that we're really going to encourage people to do. You can do it at any time. Certainly it has to make sense. Most people aren't going to move for $10 or $15 a month. And we need to make sure that we address this during the first quarter or next year, the first 8 or 9 months of the year. Kristen's going to now explain to you in more detail about the Advantage plan so that you can kind of start to think in your own mind, okay, I'm on the left side of the diagram. If you were to fill out the worksheet that we sent you, everybody's got to be in original Medicare. So you've got $164.90. You know how much you pay for your Medigap and how that works. You know how much you pay for your Part D. And now you're going to have a little better understanding. I'm going to pass it over to Kristen. We're actually going to change spots here in the chair. And she'll let you know about the Advantage plan.
All right. Hello. Okay. So what are Medicare Advantage plans? So those Medicare Advantage plans, like Nancy mentioned, they're also referred to as Part C. So they come in and it combines your original Medicare Part A and B and now C. And then often many of these plans have Part D built right in too. So it's really a one-stop shopping, if you will. These are private health plans that pay instead of Medicare. So how your current plan is a little different with this one, because when you have something that happens, the plan is paying, you know, the Medicare Advantage plan is what is paying over Medicare. So this covers everything that your original Part A and B Medicare covers, plus more. So we're going to talk about what is that plus more. A big difference from what you currently have is that these plans, while they offer lower monthly premiums, when you go to use your plan, there are deductibles and copays and coinsurances that apply to the plan. So, you know, it's really, you pay as you go. So how do you get one of these plans, right? You have to live within the plan's service area. And this is all based on if your zip code and what county that you live in. And that's what's available to you is how you can get one of these plans. And on the flip side of that, what is my monthly premium going to be based on? Well, again, that goes back to where you live in what county, because they're not all available in every single county. There are many $0 monthly premium plans. So while you have this $0 monthly premium plan for your Medicare Advantage, you do have to remember that you do still have to pay that Part B monthly premium. And then again, for this year, most people pay that first level of it at that $164.90. But you do always have to continue to pay that Part B premium. So these plans are similar to maybe a group plan that you had while working, or maybe your spouse still has something like that, but they're PPOs, HMO POS plans, and HMOs. So that PPO plan, Preferred Provider Organization, is what that stands for. That type of Medicare Advantage plan allows you a little bit more flexibility to go in and out of network. And then the HMO POS plan, that POS portion, point of service, that actually is very similar. It's starting to mirror a little bit more of that PPO look. So you can go in and out of network, but again, it's all about remaining in network to get the most out of your plan. However, the POS portion just allows you to be able to go in and out. And then the HMO, we suggest that you should stay in network to get the most out of your plan. And again, that next line, kind of what we just are talking about. Yep, there's these in and out of network conditions. So the maximum out of pocket, this is something that you don't currently have on your plan. So on your current plan, you know what your monthly premium is for, you know, those 12 months out of the year. Where this maximum out of pocket, it's your worst case scenario, what you could potentially have to pay over the course of the year. So this is not to be confused with a deductible because you don't have to satisfy the maximum out of pocket for the year to then have your plan come in and you be getting benefits from it. So an example on that, you have copays, right? So you go to see a specialist, you go to a dermatologist, and maybe the copay is $45. That $45 is going to go into this bucket for your maximum out of pocket, and then the plan comes in and pays for everything. So not a lot of our clients meet their maximum out of pocket for the year. I would say those that do, and it is very few, it's just something, a more catastrophic event that has occurred. And of course, that maximum out of pocket varies by plan, so they're all different. These plans change annually, so similar to your current Part D plan, where we always suggest that you revisit it at before October 1st, you should be receiving your annual notice of change in the mail on your current Part D, or if you had an Advantage plan right now, you again would be receiving that before 10/1. And the annual notice of change is going to show you everything to your plan that's changing for the coming year of 2024. So we suggest that you do review that. And I mean, if there's stuff in there that you feel okay with and you don't want to do a revisit, then maybe you don't need to do an appointment, and then it would just roll into the next year. But if there's something, of course, we would love to have you come and we can revisit that with you. So the Medicare Advantage plan and those separate Part D plans, those are what change annually. So don't let them go just running on autopilot. That annual enrollment period, AEP, it's right around the corner for us. We are amping up over here because we've got new rules that go into play this year from CMS, and some that kind of started last year, but we of course continue to follow these rules. But that is our busiest time of year. So October 15 to December 7, that's the one time we can change the Part D and then the Part C, that Advantage plan, and then it would become effective January 1. So if you are interested in having an appointment, give us a call. We are already booking a lot of appointments. So just keep that on the forefront. And then the Medicare Advantage plans, if you do decide to make a move over to that, you are never subject to any medical underwriting. Where on the Medigap side, on that left side, you do have to answer medical underwriting questions if you're looking to revisit your plan. However, if you do want to move over to a Medicare Advantage plan, you do have what they call a trial right. So you have a 12-month window where you could move from your current plan over to a Medicare Advantage plan. You have 12 months, try it out. If you like it, you can of course stay there on the Advantage side, or you can go back to your plan that you're currently in. It has to be the same exact plan, same carrier, and then you can avoid those medical underwriting questions. The Advantage plans, they're much like, I think I kind of said this a little bit before, but they're very similar to a group plan that you maybe were on in the past. And it is just you pay as you go. They do offer traveling, international, and all over the US. You have emergency and urgent care services. So the same copay that you would pay here in West Michigan, you would pay no matter where you went. So the Medicare Advantage plans, like I said before, that they kind of are encompassing all of this. Most of them have that Part D prescription drug coverage that is built into the plan. There are a few, of course, that don't, but if you were someone who had VA coverage and you used that drug coverage, you would look at one that didn't have the Part D built in. But for the most part, we work with a lot of folks who have the Part D built right into their plan. So that means there's not an additional premium for your Part D plan. Now, on this side of Medicare, the Part D is still built very similar to what you know today on your separate Part D plan, where when you go to the pharmacy, we of course suggest you want to use a preferred pharmacy. There are of course standard and out-of-network pharmacies, but you're just gonna pay a lot more. So we suggest make sure you're using a preferred. You can also do a 90-day mail order on your stuff. And sometimes that actually, for your prescriptions, it might even be a better deal to do that. It all depends, but that's something that we could show you as well. And then, like I mentioned, there's no additional monthly premium with this Part D since it's built in, but it looks very similar to what you have today, where there's formularies and they break them down into tiers. And so we can look at things like that. Many of them, these plans that are built in, they do not have a prescription drug deductible that applies. And then for those of you who are familiar with the donut hole and or coverage gap, that does exist on this side as well. So what that is, just a little refresher for anybody who maybe doesn't go into the donut hole, is it's when you and the plan together have paid a certain amount of money. And again, every year that amount usually goes up. So for this year, it's $4,660.
Mhm.
And once you and the plan together have paid that, then they dump you into the donut hole. And once you're in the donut hole, that first level of it, now you're responsible to pay 25% of the cost of the drug. The Medicare Advantage plans do offer the preventative dental, vision, and hearing built right in. And again, on this side, it is all about those networks. So each carrier generally chooses a network for their dental. So now we want to remain within that. Make sure your dentist participates with that. And that's what we would ask for too, is a list of your doctors to make sure whatever carrier we're showing you that they do in fact participate with everything in the plan. The preventative piece that's built right in, that is at a $0 cost to you. They do also offer an optional buy-up or enhanced dental and vision. So if you need a little bit more dental care, then that might be something that you would be interested in paying for. Many of the plans offer this over-the-counter benefit. Maybe you've heard of this. Maybe you have some neighbors or something that are on this style of plan, but what it is for the over-the-counter is it's an amount of money that goes on a card, similar kind of to like a gift card or a credit card, if you will. Electronically, those funds go on there and you can use them in stores, online. You can also order over the phone through whichever carrier's catalog that they have, and you can purchase these healthcare products. So maybe supplements, Band-Aids, eye drops. They have other things on there like shower assist bars and maybe a scale, but all kinds of stuff on that. And then these plans do offer a gym membership. They are encouraging a healthy lifestyle. So they do have a lot of benefits added into the plans to kind of help encourage that healthy lifestyle. And the gym membership, it works well all over Michigan and even outside of Michigan. If you travel, you can look up on your app to see who in the area is participating if you're on vacation, or if you're somebody who maybe you go to Florida or Arizona for a few months out of the year. And then here we just listed a few other items. So some of them offer these meals. That means that after following a hospital stay, once you come home, you have the opportunity to have some prepackaged meals, and they follow all different kinds of dietary restrictions. So kind of a nice thing if you are coming home from a hospital stay and trying to get back on your feet again. A few of the plans offer transportation. So if you are having a hard time getting from home to a doctor's appointment, for example, then you can use maybe you would want to look at a plan that does offer that transportation to give you a little bit more assistance so you can make it to your appointments. And then there's a lot more things that they add into it. There's other travel things and stuff, but we can talk more about that if you are interested in the Advantage plans. Do we have any questions? It doesn't look like anybody's typed anything in the chat box yet, but feel free to. We've got it open on the other computer so we can communicate a little bit better with you guys. So we'll keep checking the chat box, but this next slide here, this is just a quick little touch on another type of insurance that it complements a Medicare Advantage plan very well. It's called hospital indemnity. And looking at the most basic level of hospital indemnity, it's a type of insurance plan that can help you cover the cost of a hospital stay. Because on those Medicare Advantage plans, well, you don't have to pay that Part A deductible because your plan is coming in to help you, but there are costs that are involved. So there are co-pays. I would say on average, some of them are days 1 through 5, we'll say. So there's a copay on all 5 of those days if you were there. And so this hospital indemnity plan comes in and can help you cover the cost of a hospital stay. They are very affordable. They're very easy to look at and kind of just determine exactly what your specific needs are. So we mentioned these riders here. I mean, there's an ambulance rider, a cancer rider, all kinds of different things. So just really depending on maybe what you're concerned about and what you're looking to have coverage on. There is a guaranteed issue period. So if you are 64 years old to 67 is about the range that we're seeing right now. Of course, it depends on the carrier, but that's something that we could look at. If you fell in that range, that just means you're guaranteed to get the policy. And then these policies too, you're locked in at those rates. So you never will see a yearly rate increase. As long as you continue to pay your premiums, it will just auto renew and you'll be locked in at that same rate. So it looks like what? We've got a question.
We've got a question. If a person has Plan G and Plan D apart from Medicare, so that's what we're talking about. So there's a Medicare supplement and a prescription drug plan. What happens if you need chemo or some other catastrophic medication? Well, you kind of got a couple things going there. As it pertains to chemotherapy, chemotherapy will go through the Part B, as in baby, of Medicare. It's often delivered at an infusion center. And as long as you have first satisfied your Part B deductible, should this happen in the beginning of the year, you will not be paying anything whatsoever for the chemo. So I have a brother-in-law who's been treated now probably for the last 3 years. He goes in every 3 weeks. He came aboard last year with Medicare. My sister said, "What do you think?" I said, "Your husband needs to be on a Medigap, because chemo can get pretty expensive." Now, how would it have been treated in the Advantage plan? He would have paid 20% of the cost of chemo. So I'm not sure what it costs, but let's say it's $5,000. So if it was $5,000 and he needed 5 treatments, he would take the 5,000 times 20%, because that's the Medicare Part B 80-20 split. So that's $1,000 a treatment. So if the maximum out of pocket on an Advantage plan is $5,000, he will have spent $5,000 on the Advantage plan. And then he won't pay anything more, because that is the catastrophic limit that Kristen made reference to. But if he's on the Medigap, he will pay nothing other than his Part B if it happens in the beginning of the year, which this year is the 2/26. Now, as it pertains to any other catastrophic kinds of medications, that's why you want to revisit your Part D, because medications do change. Now, the government also says that the formularies that every Part D company offers up have to meet certain criteria. So they will very much say to the WellCares and the Blue Crosses and the United Healthcares and all these other companies, of which some of you have these companies, the government's very clear that if you participate as a prescription drug plan, you must be able to treat all different kinds of cancer. So whether it's a pill form, something where you yourself are taking it, again, outside of an infusion center where it's being delivered to you, the government says cancer, arthritis, diabetes, the list goes on. And then the companies generally will determine which set of medications that meet that criteria they're going to put on their formulary. So most of the companies all share tier 1 and tier 2, which are generics. They're very much the same from company to company. Where they start to separate is going to be the brand names. So that's why we encourage you, if you do have expensive medications or you anticipate an expensive medication, let us take a look to see what plan might be best. But again, don't leave them in autopilot. Because I know when Eliquis came out about 10 or 12 years ago, there were only 2 or 3 plans that had it the very first time it came out. Now it's on everybody's formulary. So if you have something like that, reach out to us. But otherwise, the majority of the time, the government has said you must be able to treat it with any and all kinds of drugs. So it most likely will be covered. So that's how I would answer that question. That was a good question. Okay,
Yes.
anybody else? Questions at this point? We've done such a wonderful job. I love that. Okay, I'm gonna keep
And
going.
I have you actually on.
You
if you
have me
want,
on
you
here.
can
Oh, we're
say-
on here together.
Yeah.
That's true. Okay. All right, so questions to help you decide. So this is just really a little recap. So you have to decide what's most important in terms of your peace of mind. Nobody can speak to what that means for you. For some of us, it's just being able to put my head on a pillow and not have to worry about anything. That might be the Medigap because it doesn't have all the co-pays and out-of-pocket stuff and stuff I got to try to figure out. So peace of mind, how important is that going to be to you? What about the monthly premium? What can you afford? Maybe you're going to have a limit where you'll say, you know what? I hardly use it. And once I hit a certain threshold, whatever that might be, in your budget, you'll say, you know what, it's time for me to make a move. And as Kristen said, the beauty of making a move is you do have 12 months. It's up to 12 months to evaluate it. So if you decide in the 10th month, the Advantage plan is not for you, they absolutely must take you back. The same carrier you were with the very same plan. So that is your fallback position. I mentioned at the morning session, we had about 20 or 25 people there too. In the past 2 years, there has been more of a move to Medicare Advantage plans. You see them advertised on TV, and we want people to know that they have become something where, let me back up and say this. Many of you, when we first sat, it was, I want to travel. And we looked at the Medigap because it had the best travel benefits in terms of being able to move from state to state. I've got a place in Florida, wherever the case may be. The Advantage plans have definitely come to the party there and said, you know what, for us to be competitive, we need to have the same benefit. Same thing with the doctors. Early on, the networks were very narrow, and now the networks are very large in terms of doctor participation. So that certainly comes into play. But the monthly premium that you can't afford, I do have clients that will say, I do have a certain amount that I kind of have in mind. Once I hit that threshold, I'm going to take a hard look. So you could be one of those. For the last 2 years, we have met with about 45 people, actually more than that said, we have a Medigap, we like it, it's getting expensive, we want to look at the Medicare Advantage plan. They moved, and there are only 2 or 3 people that have returned, and they return for very specific reasons, okay? But the vast majority of people, and I'm not pushing it one way or the other, because as we've said, it really is an individual personalized decision, but those that did give it thought and said, I do want to try it, they have been happy with it. It doesn't mean that has to be you, but those that we have followed up with have been very happy. So travel plans, again, the Medigap really does the best job of traveling. It doesn't mean the Advantage plan won't work. It just might involve a little bit more time and effort on your part. If you happen to pick somebody in Florida, they're a dermatologist, you have to make sure that they're going to play well with the carrier. So often you have to have your doctor in Florida as an example, and I had it yesterday, where we then called the carrier. I'm not going to say who it was, doesn't really matter. And they said, yes, we do recognize that particular physician. It's not going to be a problem at all. Just like he would have paid $45 to go to the doctor in Grand Rapids, it's going to be $45 in Fort Lauderdale. So that probably would not happen with the Medigap, having to kind of go the little extra effort. But with a little extra effort, you just kind of have to pave the way to make sure. With an Advantage plan, anytime you have a medical emergency or an urgent care, the whole idea of in and out of the network goes out the window. You don't have to be thinking about it at all. You will always have coverage at whatever the rate is for the Medicare Advantage plan. And today, if you go to the emergency room with an Advantage plan, you're gonna pay $100. If you go to an urgent care facility, you're gonna pay between $50 and $60. If you get admitted to the hospital, you're gonna have a copay of at least $300. And like Kristen said, there will be a threshold. So you're not on it for 99 days, but you're gonna pay for the first 5 or the 6 days. So the plan, if you decide to make a move to an Advantage plan, we need to know about your doctors, because it's very important that we know whether or not they participate with that particular plan selection. So in terms of market share in Western Michigan, Priority Health is the big dog. There's no doubt about that, okay? So if that was a plan that you wanted to see, we would make sure the doctors all participate. And we are asking, and we'll speak a little bit to it at the end, that we can gather a lot of that information so that we can be prepared for an appointment with you if you decide to go to the Advantage plan. As you know, the beauty of the Medigap was all you had to ask the doctor, do you take Medicare? Now you got to go the step further with an Advantage plan to make sure that they participate. What is your medical usage? Look at it. Have you been in the hospital? Do you have a knee replacement plan? Are you going to be doing a lot of physical therapy? So those are only things that you can kind of look at and say, this is what I know about myself from the past, and this is the type of thing that I anticipate in the future. And of course, every once in a while, we kind of get knocked off and we're like, wow, what just happened here? Because as we continue to get a bit older, there are things that we did not expect that we definitely have to be responsible for. I had kind of a little bit of a scare a couple weeks ago, and everything's fine. But I said, wow, I'm glad that I have good insurance. We'll leave it with that. So what is your medical usage? That's very important. The rainy day savings fund has to do with really the Medicare Advantage plan. That person knows going into it that they have maximum exposure of whatever that maximum out of pocket is. If you pay more in a premium, you're going to have a lower maximum out of pocket. Most of the zero premium plans that are advertised all over the TV, and you're going to see more of them again, they are in the average of about $5,000. So that person that says, I'm going with an Advantage plan, probably says they're pretty healthy. And you know what? If they ever had to come up with $5,000, they could. And it'll never happen all at one time. If you're in the hospital and it's $300 and you have to pay for the first 5, you're going to get a bill for $1,500, but you're not going to get a bill for $5,000 unless you go back in the hospital multiple times. And again, that is the safeguard. So that's the rainy day savings fund that some people have said, yeah, I'm going to set that aside. And key reminder, there's that 12-month trial, right? It is 12 months from when you make a change. So most people, if they do decide to move to a Medicare Advantage plan, it generally is January 1st. And then they have the whole year to evaluate whether or not they want to stay or whether they want to go. Once the 13th month has passed, then you are subject to the medical underwriting. And the medical underwriting, as we said before, is a series of questions. We go through that with you beforehand, and we try to quantify to make sure that you're a good candidate for it. If you get declined, you still have your insurance. And if you get approved, you probably save some money, but then you're staying with the Medigap. You may not even stay with the same carrier, because we're going to go back to the drawing board, find out who's competitive, a name that you recognize, maybe a name you don't recognize. There are carriers that sometimes when you go to the doctor, they go, whoa, I've never heard of this. But there are about 35 different companies that represent the Medigap supplement, and they are allowed by the government to sell those Plan G, Plan F, Plan N, and so on. Plan F is no longer being sold to anybody that comes aboard with Medicare. But if you have a Part A that's dated 2019 and you revisited your Medigap, you're still eligible for Plan F. So it wasn't removed for everybody. It just was removed for people that were new coming aboard in 2020 and later. And again, the whole revisiting process, some of you have been through that with us before. It's pretty painless. All they do is call you on the phone. and they're gonna go through the application. You're gonna have listed your medications and why you take them and how long you've taken them. And either you're in or you're not in. And they don't rate you or, charge you more for this or charge you more for that. There are sometimes height and weight considerations that come into play. And sometimes there might be enough charge as a result of that. But generally, it's either you're approved or you're not approved. So let's see if there are any other questions.
Yeah, that most recent one, and kind of goes into what you're just talking about.
Is there any indication that the government will try to get rid of Plan F by raising premium costs to force people out? I don't know. I've read pros and cons. I can't really say that I've seen that. Because I know there's one company that I've done the Plan F on, and they're actually less than everybody else. So whether it's they have a big block of business and that's why they're still able to offer that, hard to really kind of tell. So I don't think there's anything that speaks to that 100%. There may be a little of that with certain companies under certain situations. So again, this is really just a reminder, and that is, remember, the open enrollment, or it really technically is called the annual election period. We often call it open enrollment because we kind of think of it that way. It runs October 15. As Kristen said, you're going to get your annual notice of change between now and the end of the month. You're also going to get your Medicare and You book, and it's for 2024, and it's going to describe any and all kinds of changes to Medicare. And in the back of the book, just so you know, that's where all the Advantage plans as well as all the prescription drug plans are listed. So you can always take a look in the back of the book. We also request that you would, if you haven't already, send to us your prescription drug list. You can go to our website, or you can even just send us an email and say, hey, send me the link. We'll be happy to send you the link. And what we're doing now is we have found a software program that allows us to save the medications for future use. In the past, we requested them and then we could never save them and go back, and we had to start all from scratch. We have a tool, it's called Search and Save. We are now inputting all of the medications. Regardless of whether you come in to see us, we're going to have them available, and that way we can just ask for any type of updating. The other thing is what's called the scope of appointment. We are asking everybody to fill out a scope of appointment. Even if you're not planning at this time to come in, we have to have a scope of appointment available to us if you want an appointment 48 hours in advance of the appointment. In the past, we could fill out the scope of appointment, and remember, this is the document that simply says, I want to talk to Kristen, Nancy, Amy about my plan. They promise not to sell me swampland and alligators and any other goofy things. We're strictly going to keep very Medicare focused. Again, remember, we're compensated by the insurance company, but the scope gives us the permission. You're granting us permission, and we promise to stay on topic and to help you with anything and anything related to Medicare. So by sending that scope in advance, we don't have to follow up with you. It's good for a whole year. So if we have a need to talk later in the year about something, we'll have that scope on file. And again, you can simply send me an email or Kristen and say, hey, I need for you to send me the scope of appointment. Unfortunately, this year, we're going to have to say to folks, look, if we don't have the scope, but we have an appointment, we are not going to be able to meet with you, because they have folks out there that are validating, and they're having us prove things. And they even have, I hope we never get one, but every once in a while we'll hear about what's called a secret shopper. And a secret shopper could come in and say, okay, no, they didn't ask for this. They weren't on time. They didn't have it 48 hours in advance, so on and so forth. So you got to help us with that part of the compliance. And in addition to that, hopefully today we've provided you with the information that will help you evaluate whether you want to stay with your Medigap. Again, you can always revisit it based on your medical history. We'll go through that with you. We ask that we do that in the first quarter, but you can certainly let us know if that's something you want us to do. We had a few folks this morning that said, yep, we get it. we're coming in for our Part D, or we're gonna wait to see what the Part D looks like, but we know we want to look at the Medigap because they know they like that approach. They're comfortable paying as they go. They've seen bills, they've had hospital experiences, and that's where they want to be. By the same token, if you know that you want to move to a Medicare Advantage plan, we highly recommend that you come into the upcoming seminar, and they're posted on our website, nancycourser.com. Kristen's going to do a webinar and a seminar strictly about priority health. Doesn't mean that we don't have Blue Cross and Humana and Aetna. It all boils down to the doctors in the network. It boils down to the maximum out of pocket. It boils down to all the little bells and whistles. It boils down to your drugs. I mean, we take a look at all of those. I mean, the biggest part of your policy should really be your medical. How's it going to respond to a significant medical need or a cancer type of situation? So if you know you want to move to a Medicare Advantage plan, it might help to come to the Priority Health or schedule an appointment with one of us, and we'll walk you through what your options would look like there. Again, knowing that you could always return to your Medigap if you decided that that's what you wanted to do.
And on a side note, I didn't mention too, when I was talking about that hospital indemnity, if you are interested in potentially moving to a Medicare Advantage plan, this next week, on September 13th, I'll be hosting an in-house seminar for hospital indemnity. So if you are thinking about the Advantage side, it might just be another good thing to learn about. So and we do have one more question.
One more question?
Yep.
How do premiums work if you switch to an Advantage plan and then want to go back to Medigap before the 11 months are over? So what you would do is you would contact us, and we would ultimately terminate the Advantage plan, because otherwise you're expected to be in it the whole year. So let's say you started out in January and November, you said, I do not want to stay. You would give us a call. We would have paperwork to terminate your Advantage plan with whatever carrier you had selected. And then we would take out a brand new application with the carrier that you had left. Could be Mutual of Omaha, United Healthcare, whoever you have, brand new application. We're going to fill it in. And there's a box there that's going to talk about, did you exercise a trial right? We're going to check the box. We still do not have to answer any of the medical questions, just like we had in the very beginning. We still do not have to put any kind of medications down. They don't ask for height and weight. They don't ask for whether you're a smoker or not smoker. We then run a quote, because what's interesting is you may be coming back at either the same rate or a different rate. So my point is this: if you return, they don't necessarily return you to the same rate you left. That's why we encourage people who are relatively healthy to revisit their plan, because it's not uncommon for somebody to revisit what they have. Now they're 3 or 4 years older. We go back to the drawing board, and they're actually able to save money. So I've had it a couple of times. I had one person that did the revisit, just like we spoke of. And when she went back to the carrier that she had left, she's like, are you serious? We just saved $50 a month. So she didn't do it on purpose in an effort to save money, but little did we realize that by going back to the drawing board, even though she was several years older, those rates had declined. Here's what I often say about the rates, and you'll get a kick out of this. Think of it as the cable company. The cable company, once they have you, they have you. In fact, I called on it last week. I wanted to get mine at least evaluated. And they said, nope, doesn't matter whether you're a loyal customer or not. The rates are going up. So I'm stuck. Okay. You don't have to be stuck if you're relatively healthy. Okay. So you can always go back to the drawing board. You can see whether or not you can get a different rate. There are times when the rate will be say the rate is $400 or $500 a month. Believe it or not, there are some plans when you get to be in your 90s, they could be that expensive. Well, then you might really want to look at the Medicare Advantage plan, because if you're paying $400 a month times 12, that's $4,800 a year. You might be better off taking your chances in a Medicare Advantage plan, assuming that your doctors participate. So you're kind of weighing both sides. Yes, the money is definitely an important part of it. That's why we say once a year, let's talk about this so that you can firmly implant in your mind, nope, this is where I know I want to stay this year. I may change my mind next year, but this is where I think I need to be this year. Or I do need to make a move this year, and this is how I would go about doing it.
Tune into Cornerstone Retirement Partners' full radio program, Your Course to Retirement. Visit cornerstone-rp.com for many valuable resources, including those mentioned on this show and other great episodes of Your Course to Retirement.
The content of this radio show is provided for informational purposes only and is not a solicitation or recommendation of any investment strategy. You are encouraged to seek investment, tax, or legal advice from an independent professional advisor.
Ed Slott's Elite IRA Advisor Group is solely an indication that the financial advisor has attended training provided by Ed Slott and Company, passed biannual examinations on material covered at conferences and in webinars, and met other membership requirements, and does not constitute an endorsement of any kind. Ed Slott's Elite IRA Advisor Group members pay a fee for the educational programs that allow them to be included in the Ed Slott's Elite IRA Advisor Group. Membership does not guarantee investment success. Fiduciary duty extends solely to investment advisory advice and does not extend to other activities such as insurance or broker-dealer services.
Advisory services offered through Brookstone Capital Management, a registered investment advisor.
Advisory clients are charged a quarterly fee for assets under management, while insurance products pay a commission, which may result in a conflict of interest regarding compensation.
Any investments and/or investment strategies mentioned involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. Any comments regarding safe and secure investments and guaranteed income streams refer only to fixed insurance products. They do not refer in any way to securities or investment advisory products. Annuity guarantees are based solely on the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing company. Withdrawals of growth from annuities may be taxable as ordinary income in the year it is taken. Individuals should review contracts for specific details of the product's features and costs. Early withdrawals may subject the owner to penalties, fees, or taxes.